We begin with our top story, this morning's major military strike carried out by the U.S. on Venezuela. Thanks so much for joining us for Fox 5 News at 10. I'm Eric Perry. The military operation, coined Absolute Resolve, included the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores. Now, we've both now seen them in New York State, where they've been indicted and will stand trial on both drug and weapons charges and trafficking charges. The lightning operation involved airstrikes in Caracas and other areas. Now that Maduro is in custody, President Trump says the U.S. will run Venezuela until a transition of power is arranged. This morning's military operation is the culmination of a campaign by the Trump administration that's gone for months with the goal of getting Maduro out of office.
We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place.
The president gave few details about how the United States would be running Venezuela, but said it won't cost the U.S. anything because American oil companies would be rebuilding the country's energy infrastructure. The military action is facing sharp pushback from some members of the public and Democratic members of Congress. Stop Bombing Venezuela protests happened across the country today. Some protesters talked about how they feel and the reason behind the bombing.
The president, Donald Trump, said it very clearly that he was coming in for oil. He was going in for the oil that is Venezuelan, and he said that it was the United States'. And that's a ridiculous assertion. This is clearly a grab for resources.
We do have team coverage for you, a live report from our nation's capital just a few moments away, but we begin here in Atlanta with Annie Mapp, who has reactions on both sides. Annie was there at a protest earlier today, and she walks us through the latest. Annie.
Eric, rallies broke out across the country, including here in Atlanta, from groups who say Nicolás Maduro's capture is a kidnapping. Now, at the same time, those U.S. military strikes on Venezuela led to hundreds of flight cancellations, many of those from Atlanta-based carrier Delta Airlines, who canceled all flights to and from that country. Protests were held nationwide Saturday from groups who are calling President Donald Trump's actions in Venezuela illegal.
And we want to show out here that the majority of people in the U.S. are against a new war.
President Trump announced the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Saturday morning, which the president says occurred during a strike on the country's capital.
It's against the UN Charter to take into custody a foreign head of state. If somebody did that to Donald Trump, that would be an act of war, and the U.S. would not tolerate that.
The U.S. military operations were also followed by the cancellations of hundreds of flights. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said the FAA restricted the airspace in the Caribbean and Venezuela to keep the public safe. He said restrictions would be lifted when appropriate. One DeKalb County woman told Fox 5 she's stuck in St. Martin.
It's definitely incredibly stressful, and not having any knowing of when we're going to actually get back. And we're just kind of at the whims of the airlines and obviously what's going on.
Now, despite those concerns you heard from the traveler and the protester, millions of Venezuelans are calling this a victory. They too held rallies across the country to celebrate as they describe Maduro as a dictator. Reporting live in Midtown, Annie Mapp, Fox 5 News.
Yeah, we saw some of those victory celebrations in Florida. Annie Mapp, thanks so much. A live look at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Annie mentioned this a little earlier. Hundreds of flights were canceled to and from Venezuela. Many of those canceled flights from Atlanta-based carrier Delta Airlines. We've counted 88 so far today. And it doesn't look like any commercial planes, Delta or otherwise, will be flying in or out of Venezuela anytime soon. According to U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, he says the airspace restrictions will be lifted when appropriate. He's urging anyone impacted to work directly with the airline to book with. Well, of course, we'll continue to keep an eye out on this story. Well, for now, Venezuela is under American control while Maduro and his wife will face federal charges. Fox News correspondent Rebecca Castor continues our continuing coverage in the nation's capital. Rebecca.
Eric, this was a mission that was months in the making, involving nearly every branch of the military, and U.S. forces pulled it off with no known U.S. casualties and a head of state in custody. After being flown to the U.S., the now ousted leader of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, taken by chopper to New York City Saturday evening, where as soon as Monday, he'll face federal drug trafficking and weapons charges. A quiet end to a dramatic day that began before dawn in Caracas when U.S. Special Forces captured him in a surprise raid.
It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark. And it was deadly.
Maduro wasn't the only one surprised. So was Congress, also kept in the dark.
That's absolute BS. The president is very clear that he wants to occupy Venezuela. He wants to take the oil. Nothing in what they've said so far in their justification is the reason why they went to get Maduro.
Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good.
The president says this wasn't about regime change, but for the time being, he says the U.S. will run Venezuela and tap its vast oil reserves until a new leader takes over. But for many of those living in exile here in the U.S., it was a day of celebration.
I'm hoping for peace of all, for being able to celebrate with my family.
The UN Security Council plans to meet Monday to discuss Venezuela, while its Secretary General says Trump's move is a dangerous precedent. Eric, back to you.
All right, Rebecca Castor from our nation's capital, thanks so much. We'll make sure to stay with Fox 5. We'll continue to update the story both on air and online, fox5atlanta.com. And also you can download our Fox Local app. All right.